Hi, welcome to Story Orchids. Today, what we are going to see is the story 5 out of 1 pod. Alright, and today our session would be a reading session. Shall we go into the story? 5 out of 1 pod. Once upon a time, there were 5 peas in a pod. The pod was green, and the little fat peas lay snug and warm in their green house, thinking that the whole world must be a beautiful green. Our pod is green, said one, and you, my brothers, are all green. Green is one of the most beautiful colors I know, said another. What nonsense you talk! You do not know any other colors. We have not yet seen the rest of the world is like, said the third pea. One night there was a sharp frost, and the little peas no longer felt snug and warm in their pod. You all are shivering, said the youngest and smallest pea. You all are changing colors. You look another color to me. The little peas talked among themselves until they all fell asleep. When they woke up in the morning, they found that they all had grown much rounder and heavier, and that they were now a greenish yellow in color. I can feel the warm sun on my head, said one. It makes me long to leave this spot and look for an adventure, said another. I agree with you, said the third little pea. If we stay here much longer, we all shall grow old and dry. They longed for freedom so much that they began making plans as if they had been already out in the big wide world. Then, suddenly, without warning, there was a loud crack and the shell cracked open. You're free, 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 cried the fifth pea. He had scarcely finished speaking when along came one of the gardeners. He was on the lookout for pods which had cracked open, and he tugged at the green shell of the 5 peas. When it came free, he put it along with other full pods in the pocket and set his jacket out for home, for it was clearly the last of the ripe pods. As they felt themselves being carried along, the 5 peas are highly delighted. It won't be long now before we are set free. It's what we have been waiting for, they said in one voice. It was dark inside the pocket, and it was certainly not green. But the 5 peas were so full of hope that wonderful adventures lay ahead of them. They were not in the least nervous or afraid. I mean to go to the end of the world, said one. I know I shall be able to fly farther than you, said another. And as they sat in their half open pod, they argued and they dreamed until all at once they found they were being lifted out of the dark, gloomy pocket and placed onto a table. A human voice, gruff but not unkind, said, Well, there you are. Not as many as I had hoped, but enough for a meal for the 3 persons. There was a pause, and then came another voice, a little boy's voice that was full of laughter. Don't cook them all, the little young voice pleaded. Let me have one of the pods to play with. Give the boy one of the pods, said the gruff voice again. Here, Johnny, take this one. It's half open already. The boy lifted the pea from the table and held it in his warm, friendly hands. We have had a most fortunate escape, the youngest pea said. I know what happens to most of our brothers and sisters. They end up in a pan of boiling water. It's a dreadful fate. There was no time for any of his brothers to reply to this, for now their paw was being carried to another place, to the little boy's playroom. What shall I do with you? The little boy asked as he looked down at the wide open pod. I know, I'll take you out of your house and have a game with you. And very gently he gave the five little pods their freedom. They rolled onto the floor and lay at his feet. The boy wished they were big and hard enough to have a proper game of marbles with. Then he counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because he was good at sums and he enjoyed counting things. What can I do with you? He asked again. You're so tiny. The boy got out his soldiers and lined them up in front of the centenary box. Then he set up the magnificent old castle he had been given to by his uncle. Even though it was flying the wrong kind of flag, it was still a splendid castle. The five peas on the ground thought the boy had forgotten all about them. But they were wrong. Suddenly, he shouted, I'll fire you from my cannon. You can be my cannonballs. Saying so, the boy fitted the fattest pea into the nozzle of his toy cannon. To the boy's great disappointment, his new cannonball did not travel very far, and he sighed impatiently as he saw them land in the street outside the window. He thought he would leave them there, and then he thought that somebody would come along and squash them flat. I mustn't let that happen, he said to himself, and looked around until he spied his pea shooter. Off he ran with it, out of the house into the street. He picked up one of the peas and putting it in his pea shooter, shot it out. The boy picked up other 4 peas also. Then he shot next 3 peas out one by one. All 4 peas were very happy to be shot out. They were enjoying the game. For them, it was a new adventure. Now it was the turn of the fifth and the last little pea, and being more nervous than his brothers, he began to wonder where he would go and if after all he was likely to enjoy the adventure. How well, he thought, what is to be must be. I hope you do better than the others, exclaimed the boy as he fitted him into his pea shooter. So far, only 2 have gone far enough away to make it exciting. Away soared the little pea, and a gust of wind with nothing better to do caught the little pea and carried it right along. The little pea was enjoying the adventure, but he was missing his 4 brothers very badly. The little pea came up against an old board under a garret window. It fell into a crack which was filled with moss and soft, warm earth. The moss closed all around him, making him a prisoner. What will happen to me now? He asked himself. There is no escape from here. But he was not so frightened as he had been, for the moss was green, and green was a color he knew and loved. Now, inside the garret, a young girl lay in bed. She was very weak and delicate and had not walked for a whole year. Her poor mother had to go out to work. The neighbors who knew about her sick child gave her jobs to do like chopping logs for firewood. And the woman was so grateful for the work that she accepted all the heavy jobs without thought of complaining. Even when she was tired and her back ached with bending over the washtub, the mother thought only of the money which would buy something for her daughter. And she would ask herself why her child seemed to be content to lie so still and quiet in bed. Now it was spring, and still the girl lay quiet and patient in bed. But early one morning, as her mother finished sweeping the room and the child fixed her eyes on something outside the garret window. "Mother," she said softly, "what is that green thing that looks in at me through the open window?" The mother opened the window wide and then exclaimed, "Goodness gracious! It's a little pea which is growing there. It must have taken root and now it is putting out its little leaves." Excuse me. The girl smiled and her mother turned the bed a little so that she could see the tender green leaves of the little pea. Then she said, "Now you have a little garden of your own to watch while I'm at work." And she finished her sweeping and set off for her daily round. Left to herself, the child kept her eyes on her little garden. And that night, when her mother returned, she thought her daughter seemed brighter and greeted her more eagerly than she had done for a long time. Although the spring, the little pea continued to shoot upwards, and the widowed mother looked after it carefully, watering it early in the morning before the sun was too hot. And as it grew, the little girl's interest in it also grew. Each night now, when her mother came back from work, she greeted her with a smile, and sometimes she asked if she might sit up in bed properly and if there would be something nice to eat for supper. "Mother," she cried one morning, "I know my little pea is happy. It must be happy because it brings me such happiness. I feel so much better. It is almost as if I felt strong enough to get out of bed and try to walk." "If only you could," exclaimed her mother, not really believing that such a miracle was possible. But she kept her fears well hidden, and she propped up the growing pea with a stick in case the wind should harm its tiny roots. One day, the little girl's mother cried, "Look, darling, there are flowers coming in your little garden." And the child laughed aloud and said eagerly while taking her supper, "Such pretty flowers! I could watch them all day long. Oh, mother, I feel so much stronger." After supper, the room was still warm from the afternoon sun. The girl got out of bed for the first time for a whole year, and her mother helped her to the window where the little pea grew so that its pretty flowers could welcome her. "Mother, mother," whispered the girl, "how beautiful my garden is." And she touched the delicate flowers with her thin white fingers and then bent down to gently kiss the flowers so that they would know that she loved them. Now, the happy mother really and truly began to believe that her daughter would get better, and she thought the miracle of that little pea finding a home outside our poor window has brought about my little girl's recovery. What a wonderful blessing it has been to us. Did the little pea know what it had done and the happiness it had given? It no longer remembered its four brothers. It thought only of the joy of growing in the warm sunshine and of its pretty flowers. But what did happen to its brothers? Two of them ended up inside the greedy pigeon. Pigeon, you guys know it's a bird. The eldest, who was the first to be shot out into the wide world, managed to travel quite a distance before dropping down onto a busy road where he was instantly squashed by a heavy boot like that. As for the ambitious brother, the one who saw himself saying good morning to the sun, perhaps you'll agree he fared much better than some of his brothers. Of course, he did not reach the sun. Instead, he dropped down into an old sink filled with the dirty water, and the pea grew fatter and fatter. I must be the most beautiful pea on earth, the fat pea said contestantly. Even the butterflies mistake me for a flower. And as he lay there in his bath, he quite forgot about wanting to fly up into the sky and greet the sun. So after all, only the youngest, the shyest of the peas did any good at all. He bloomed all through the spring and was enjoying his good fortune. He was the only pea who had a good adventure and was still alive. The little girl, whose cheeks were now rosy with health, looked upon him as her very own dearest friend. Each morning, as soon as she was up and dressed, she looked out of the window to wish her little pea the very happiest of good mornings. The little pea had grown into a plant. It had green leaves and beautiful flowers. Now it had become the friend of the little girl. The little girl's neighbors were happy as well and surprised at her recovery. How would I have got on without you? She often whispered, sitting hours in front of the window with her mother. Her mother was very happy to see her daughter well again. Now the little girl was able to walk freely. It is all because of you that I am well and strong again. I have so much to thank you for. And the little pea heard and quite understood. Truly, I must be the most blessed of the five of us who came out of the green pod a long time ago. With that, we come to the end of the story. I hope you guys enjoyed this beautiful story about a small and very shy pea and the group of peas along with it. I'll put down a link down below if you guys want to get the same book. And also, if you guys have any story suggestions you want me to read to you guys or read and tell you guys, do let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to leave a like and share this if you enjoy it. Until next time, tata bye-bye. Signing off is Arifa.